Started here in a minute, so if everyone can get settled down, or if you're on the video, we'll give a 30-second warning here. Please sit down and we'll get started so we can get out of here on time on a great Friday in Milwaukee. All right, I think we're getting ready to get, we'll be settled in here. As a reminder, we're in a new, well, not as a reminder, those on video, you can see we're in a new room or a different room, which is part of the new Baird Center around the 1-year anniversary, I believe, or close to that, Marty. So for those in the room, as a reminder, if you want to talk, press the button and then the red light will come on if you do want to talk so we can hear you as well. With that, who's taking roll? Robin is? Okay, Robin, ready to take roll call, please.
Robin, before you start, this is Robin Pitts. She joins us 3 weeks ago. She's the new executive assistant for the district. Really thrilled to have her here. And with that, say hello to Robin.
Thank you. Alderman Robert Bauman. Here. Alderwoman Malele Cox.
Present.
Mr. Grady Crosby. Here. Mr. Bill Christensen.
Here.
Mr. Mark Flaherty. Here. Representative Kaylin Haywood. Representative Kaylin Haywood. Senator Rob Hutton. Here. Senator LaTanya Johnson. Here. Mr. James Cantor.
Here.
Secretary Kathy Blumenfeld.
Here.
Mr. Greg Marcus. Mr. Greg Marcus. Mayor Dennis McBride.
Here.
Alderman Jose Perez. Mr. Gerard Randall. Here. Representative Jesse Rodriguez. Here. Mr. Omar Sheck.
Here.
Miss Liz Sumner.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Great, thank you, Robin. First order of business is any discussion and the approval of the meeting minutes from February 7th of 2025, which was our last board meeting. Do we have any discussion? I'll seek a motion for approval.
I'll move it. Second.
Second. Grady. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting minutes are approved. With that, we do have a fairly financial-heavy discussion today, including our reporting out from Steve and our audit. So I'll turn it over for the next portion over to Steve Marsh, our CFO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. The main financial topic of today's meeting is a presentation from Baker Tilly regarding the 2024 audited financials. We'll also review today year-to-date 2025 financials as well as a projected year-end forecast. But before we get into the numbers, a few quick updates. Number one, as part of the district's long-term strategic financial plan, management will be evaluating opportunities to defease or not some of its long-term debt later this year. As we discussed last fall, the transaction the board approved in October of 2024 was year one of a potential 5-year plan to retire some long-term debt early in advance of the 2030 bond call dates. Later this summer, management will be reviewing with Baird the current state of the debt markets, as well as the cash position of the restricted reserve account to determine if executing a defeasance transaction is in the best interest of the organization. We, of course, will continue to update the full board as opportunities present themselves. And number two, Marty and I thought it important to update the board on a project the district is currently undertaking to improve and optimize its business processes. As we've become a more sophisticated and professional organization during Marty's tenure, our business and operations have become more complex. After the expansion opened, the management team took a step back to evaluate how we do business, and we determined our current systems and processes were not serving us like we needed. So last year, we kicked off an initiative to solve for this problem. A large focus of this initiative will be retiring outdated and unsupported technology that we use in finance, purchasing, billing, data analysis, and content management. The implementation of a new ERP system is an enormous component of this overall project, and that will impact the finance department as well as other areas of the organization in a significant and positive way. Additionally, and included in this year's IT budget, we are making strategic investments in software and systems across the entire organization. This initiative will modernize the way WCD operates, keep us competitive, future-proof us against changes, and position us to seize on opportunities to grow. A consulting firm out of Madison called SVA is assisting the senior management team with this endeavor, in particular with project structure and change management, and we will continue to update the board on the progress of this very important initiative. Okay, so let's get into the 2025 numbers, and we're going to start with page 6 of your packet, which is the event mix summary. I won't spend a lot of time on this today, but you can see in column B that the current 2025 event mix forecast shows that we're about 85% to our budget number. The biggest gap right now is line 5, corporate meetings. This business segment typically contributes the least amount of net income per event to our bottom line, so the lack of events booked under this category to date isn't overly concerning, and oftentimes these event types require the least amount of lead time on our calendar, so we're optimistic these numbers can tick up before year end. And just as a caveat, while the numbers in this event mix can be useful in understanding the levels of event activity on our campus, they are far from perfect when attempting to understand building utilization and ultimately net income. In fact, as part of the business process optimization initiative I just mentioned, we're working to develop more transparent and relevant metrics to measure district event activity, and we may look to introduce those key performance indicators in the next fiscal year. So let's move to page 7, which is our year-to-date income statement with column IDs A, B, C, and D at the top. Column A represents year-to-date budget through March. Column B represents year-to-date actual results, and column C is the variance between the two. Starting with the bottom line first, you see on line 65, column C, we're off from budget by about $300K. And there's several line items driving this variance. First, to operating income, line number 4, food and beverage revenue is down from budget by about $270K. While gross revenues in this category are coming in greater than budget, the expenses incurred to run that business segment have also been greater than expected, notably on the labor side. Levy is and has been working with the district team to develop strategies to lower this expense going forward. And it's a delicate balance, frankly, between managing labor expense and delivering a level of service our clients expect, so our team is taking a very thoughtful and intentional approach to this topic. Despite this negative variance, total operating revenues are down from budget by only 3%, as noted on line 14. Moving to line 34, you see tax revenues are less than budget by just over 1.5 points, most of which is related to car rental tax. Management is not overly concerned about this variance right now, and we continue to forecast our budget number for the remainder of the year, as you'll see momentarily. Line 44, health and dental insurance is running a little higher right now due to the early onboarding of some benefited employees. And line 49, Visit Milwaukee expenses also higher due to better than expected tax revenue collections in the fourth quarter of 2024, which of course is what their payment is benchmarked against. Historically, through first quarter, it's not uncommon for us to see these variances relative to budget. The combination of these 4 primary factors leaves the district with a negative net income budget variance of about 13%, as noted on line 65. So what does the rest of the year look like? Well, we're going to turn to page 8 of your packet, which has column IDs E, F, G, and H at the top. This income statement compares our annual budget, column E, to our projected annual year-end forecast, column F. And again, starting at the bottom line in 65, column G, you can see that while the negative overall variance grows from year to date, it's a smaller overall variance as a percentage of net income, 5% for the year versus 13% year to date. You can see total operating income, line 14 is better than budget by about $250K. And despite the growing negative variance in line 4, food and beverage, we do expect most of our other event revenue categories to be better than budget, driven by strong blue sky bookings by the WCD sales teams that have actualized for third and fourth quarter. Now, line 27, operating expenses, is expected to be about 2% over budget, driven by operating wages, line 15, and total event expense, line 20, and that captures the amount of event revenue we share with our arena team tenants on food and beverage and merchandise sales. Line 34, tax revenues, we're keeping in the forecast, the year-to-date negative variance through the first 3 months, but are forecasting budget the rest of the year. Line 38, Bucks District ticket surcharge is down from budget, namely a result of the early Bucks playoff exit. We had assumed a deeper playoff run in our budget. And again, the other big notable variance is that Visit Milwaukee line item, line 49. As mentioned on the prior page, this is a function of the 24 fourth quarter tax revenues coming in better than expected. Again, overall, line 65, column G is showing that $1.5 million negative variance on $29 million of budget net income. Management is not overly concerned at this time with this forecast for several reasons. Number one, I would say that some of our forecast projections are hedging on the conservative side with some uncertainty linked to tariffs and the impact that's having on travel, as well as actions that have reduced or cut federal funding and grants to state national associations. We're taking a cautious approach to our forecast for the remainder of the year, or at least until there appears to be more certainty related to these macroeconomic issues. Number two, should this forecast come to pass, the district has sufficient operating reserves to manage through this without introducing material financial risk into the organization. And lastly, number three, there are some discretionary spending dials that management can turn if necessary that would limit cash outflows and still allow us to serve our customers and meet our contract obligations in 2025. The remainder of the calendar year is strong with some remaining opportunities for upside, so it is possible that come our next meeting in September, we've closed some or all of this budget gap. Are there any questions on the income statement? Okay, pages 10 and 11 represent the district's annual capital budget forecast. On line 65, you can see we're currently forecasting our budget number. One of the district's financial risk mitigation strategies is to hold most of our capital spend until the second half of the year in the event we need to delay the implementation of any projects due to a challenging financial result from operations. For now, we're assuming all of our budgeted projects are executed, but again, it's a dial we can turn if necessary. Pages 12 and 13 represent cash flow projections for the remainder of the year, and these really represent the district's checkbook balances. Page 12 is the unrestricted revenue projection. These numbers are all derived from the projected year-end income statement we just reviewed. You see in the bottom right-hand corner, we expect to have a year-end balance of $12.4 million, which is off from the budget number we established in October, but consistent with what we'd expect based on the forecast we're providing. Again, the balance is sufficient enough to fund any net negative cash flow from operations in 2025. Page 13 is the restricted position. Line 20, you can see we expect to grow the account by $5.9 million in 2025 and end the year with a $27 million plus balance. That's about $1 million more than what we had budgeted. With this balance getting these levels, and as I mentioned at the opening of this meeting, we will be investigating options to use a portion of these funds to defease some long-term debt. More to come on this matter, and again, we'll continue to update the board as we prepare to take any next steps in that process. There's certainly good news here to have options and flexibility with both of these fund balances. As I noted in January, these funds are a position of strength for the district and allows us to manage through net negative operating years and also create optionality for our debt management strategy. Mr. Chairman, that is my report. Happy to take any questions before we jump into the audit report.
Thank you, Steve. Are there any questions for Steve on the financial reporting? Okay, great. If not, I'll have you introduce Wendy and the team.
Great. Well, before Wendy gets started here, I just want to quickly say that this year's engagement between Baker Tilly and the WCD was extremely cooperative and congenial. For the most part, all information requested by Baker Tilly was provided on time or ahead of schedule, and subsequent discussions and follow-up between management and Baker Tilly were tight and efficient. I'd like to acknowledge the district's internal finance team, namely Kyle Graham and David Ray. They are now well-seasoned veterans of not only district business operations, but also the audit procedures we execute each year. Their ever-growing institutional knowledge has proven to be invaluable during this process, so a big thank you to both of them for their work on this audit. As has been customary for the past 7 years, Marty and I, along with Kyle, reviewed these statements in advance with the city comptroller and also provided the county comptroller an advance preview of these statements. And last Thursday, Wendy presented these reports to the Finance Committee, and the committee voted affirmatively to recommend that the full board today adopt these 2024 financial statements. Management believes these statements are well vetted and are a result of the importance that Marty and I place on the integrity and transparency of the financial results of this organization. So at the conclusion of Wendy's presentation today, and subject to any discussion from the board, management will ask for the board to vote to adopt the financial statements and audit report. With that, Wendy, I turn it over to you.
All right, well, wonderful. Good morning, everyone. Wendy Younger, principal with Baker Tilly, and the individual that's responsible for the audit of the district. On the next slide, I've included an agenda, a very brief agenda. We'll go through the auditor's objective and opinion. We'll go through some very high-level financial highlights. We will talk about the reporting and insights document and the Levy food service agreed upon procedures and opinion that we issue related to that. I will open it up to questions at the end, but if you do have any as I'm moving through the presentation, please feel free to ask. On the next slide, this is where I've included the objective and the opinion that we plan to issue related to the district. I will just, before I get into that, mention that all the documents that are before you today are in draft format. Upon that approval that Steve just mentioned, we will then issue these in final format and provide them to the district for distribution. So beginning on this slide, the objective of the audit was to issue an opinion on the financial statements of the district. We've done that, and in draft form, we have included an unmodified opinion. That is the same type of opinion the district has received in the past. That is the highest level of assurance that you can obtain from us as your auditors. That unmodified opinion means that the information is believed to be materially accurate, that generally accepted accounting principles have been adhered to, and that all the disclosures that are required to be included under the standards have been within the audited financial statements. I have included a bullet point at the very bottom on this slide that just notes that there was a new governmental accounting standard, or a GASB, that was effective for the district for 2024. The district did decide to implement that standard, although it was not a material impact to the district. They did implement, and the result of that implementation was an additional roughly $197,000 of compensated absences being recorded in the district's financial statement. So it is now recorded as a liability with an offset to the expense, and that will be maintained on a go-forward basis. So I just wanted to highlight that. On the next slide, moving forward into some, again, very high-level financial information, is the next slide is the statement of net position. This is the balance sheet for the district, showing a comparison of 24 to 23. A couple items I will highlight here, and you're going to hear a very recurring rationale or reasoning for a lot of the variances that have occurred between 23 and 24. So as you can see, total assets decreased by roughly $75.9 million from 23 to 24. A couple reasons for that fluctuation. You spent the remaining construction cash that was on hand. That was roughly $116 million of cash that was available for the construction project, and that is now gone. A byproduct of that is that the district did capitalize the building project that was in construction in progress in 23, moved it into building and some ancillary costs in 24, along with roughly another $70 million of activity in 24. This movement resulted in additional accumulated depreciation or additional depreciation being recorded in 24 in comparison to 23 in depreciation. We'll see in a moment the fluctuation that occurred there. So that is the fluctuation in total assets. When you look at your total outflows of resources, these are items that relate to activity related to the pension and OPEB obligations that the district is participating in. This activity is based on actuarial information, and as you can see here, there was an increase in those deferred outflows by roughly $4 million in the current year. Liabilities also saw a downward trend in comparison to 23. As you can see, current liabilities went down by roughly 45 million. That is all or mainly in the area of accounts payable. So at the end of 23, there were significant construction invoices that existed. Those invoices were paid during 24 and did not exist as of the end of the year due to construction being mainly completed. The long-term obligations, you'll also note roughly a $7 million decrease. Again, a couple contributing factors here. As Steve mentioned in his presentation, there was some defeasance of debt in 24. So there was a $27 million decrease in debt. 12 million of that related to the defeasance of the 2020 D issue, and the remaining portion of that related to just the normal and customary pay down that the district has on an annual basis. In addition, in that long-term liabilities section is the pension liability that exists, and that increased by roughly 8 million over the previous year. And also the accrued interest on long-term obligations also increased by roughly 15 million. So the net effect of those various fluctuations contributed to that $7 million decrease. Deferred inflows of resources, again, related to pension and OPEB activity, remained relatively consistent year over year. The bottom section highlights the net position. You'll note that net position did decrease, that very bottom row. And if we go to the next slide, we can talk about the contributing factors related to that. On the top portion of the slide, this is the income statement for the district. We've switched gears over to the revenue and expense side. You'll note in total operating revenues, revenue was up $7 million over the previous year. Again, the main contributing factor to this was the RNC. The district did receive $4 million license fee from the RNC, and also just the related food and beverage cost or revenue increase from that event, which was roughly $2 million, explains the increase in operating revenues in that section. In the total operating expenses, mid-page, you'll note that there's a $20 million increase in operating expenses. Again, you'll note that depreciation and amortization row, which is the very last line in that section, saw almost a $10 million increase. That $10 million increase, as I noted on the previous slides, is related to the building construction and now being capitalized and utilized, does result in additional depreciation expense. Good news, not a cash transaction, but still flows through your income statement. In addition to the $10 million increase there, you'll note there was also various fluctuations in the allocated and unallocated operating expenses. One of the largest reasons there is the expansion. The Baird Center does result in additional, a larger footprint, which results in higher wages, more engineers, electricians, carpenters, higher utilities, more cleaning costs. So those ultimately resulted in some increase in the operating expenses. Also included in that section, I mentioned on the previous slide, the increase in the pension liability up to the 8 million. The result of that on the income statement side was a $2.8 million increase in expenses to bring that liability into line with where it should be based on actuarial information. So that is also a larger component there. Moving on to the net non-operating income expense section, which is the next area, you'll note relatively consistent net tax revenue saw an increase of roughly 3.3 million. And that was really in all of the categories, room tax, car rental, all of those areas saw a significant increase. You'll note in your audited statements, there is a breakout and shows us in more detail. But really, probably the largest fluctuation in this category is the other income. This is where your investment income activity is included. So that is down roughly 6 million over the previous year. When I spoke about the statement of net position, I did discuss the decrease in cash by roughly 116 million, and ultimately that resulted in less investment earnings during 2024. So at the bottom of the page, you'll note the decrease in net position was $2.7 million. Last year, the decrease in net position this year was roughly almost 19 million, with the largest factor being that increase in depreciation, resulting with net position being 112 million as of the end of the year. If we go to the next slide, the last bit of financial information that I have included within this presentation is the statement of cash flows. Again, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but I think the important section to look at is the bottom line change in cash and cash equivalents. Noted the 115 million decrease in cash and cash equivalent. If you go up a few rows, you'll notice in the capital asset purchased row, almost equivalent to what that decrease was. So again, you used some cash you had on hand to ultimately pay the remaining costs related to the Baird Center, resulting in that decrease in cash. As of the end of the year, the district did end at 76.4 million of cash for 24, and that is in comparison to 192 million at the end of 23. On the next slide is another document that we issue as part of the audit process. This is our reporting and insights document. This is also included in draft form in your materials. Just a couple items to note here. This document is very consistent with what you've seen in the past. Does continue to have a material weakness related to the financial statement process, meaning that we as your auditors prepare your audited statements. We also do a material journal entry related to the pension activity. I know that management has already got thoughts and processes and potential procedures in place to address this in the upcoming year. So that is very exciting and very positive. Also included in that report is some two-way communication, that solicitation from you as board members for input on subsequent year audit, areas you want us to look at, things that you have concerns over. Please reach out, and that area really is highlighting and trying to spark some thought related to that. We do have other comments and recommendations section that is really related to new governmental accounting standards, or GASBs, that will be applicable to the district in the upcoming years, and we'll work with management to ensure the district is compliant. There is a required communication section. Those are items that we need to communicate with you, those charged with governance under our standards. Again, nothing unusual or unexpected included in that section. The largest component of that section highlights the very estimates that are included within your statements. Nothing new or different included, but would encourage you to take a look at that. The last item here is a management representation letter. That is a document that will ultimately be put on district letterhead, really highlights the various representations that are made to us by the district throughout the audit process. That again is in draft form and will be finalized upon approval by the board this morning of the draft documents. On the next slide, the last item that I want to highlight, and I will have one more point to quickly add here, the Levy food service project that we do for you. We do issue an opinion, not necessarily an audit opinion. It's not the same type of activity, but we do issue an opinion on the schedule for revenues, expenses of Levy. The draft that is included in your report, there is nothing unusual or unexpected within that report, and everything was in very good shape and as expected. The only other item I will quickly mention is we also perform some agreed upon procedures on the pilot calculation between the district and the city. We've done that. Again, included in your packets is a draft report. Nothing unexpected noted there, except for that the calculated revenue is a loss as of the end of 24, and therefore will result in no pilot payment being made. On the next slide, I do include my email address, my work and cell number. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. Happy to talk with any of you. But at this point, I'd also be happy to address any questions you may have currently.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you for the report, Steve. You and your team, Wendy, you and your team as well. Do we have any questions for Wendy or Steve, either online or in the room? All right. If not, our next order of business then would be to take a vote to approve the audit report. So seek a motion for approval of the Wisconsin Center District 2024 audit report as presented by Baker Tilly. Do we have a second?
This is Bill. I'll make that motion.
Sorry. We couldn't hear. Who was that on?
Oh, this is Bill. I'll make that motion.
Okay. Do we have a second? Okay. Gerard, second. Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. The audit report has been approved. Next order of business, I'll turn it over to Marty for some benefits agreements and amended agreements that we have, as well as a CEO report right after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last month, I shared with you a memo outlining the modifications to the amended and restated services and benefits agreement between the City of Milwaukee and WCD. These changes are a result of voluntary negotiations between the district and representatives of the city that were initiated by a resolution passed by the Common Council in October of 2023. The resolution directed members of the city government to request discussions with us to amend the terms of the existing agreement that was mutually executed back in April of 2020. The 2020 agreement was developed as a condition from the city for the city to reinstate their certification to the state of Wisconsin that the Baird Center expansion met the prescribed criteria required for the expansion project to receive the state's moral obligation on the sale of the bonds needed to fund the project. This amended and restated agreement is subject to the approval of you, the district's board, the city mayor, and common council. The notable changes are, commencing March 2026, the WCD agrees to make a guaranteed payment of $500,000 to the city, increasing by 2.5% per year in each of the remaining years of the agreement. In the final year of the term, currently expected to be 2060, the annual payment will be $1,157,661, allowing certainty to both the city and the WCD for budgeting. Secondly, the city agrees to eliminate the annual payment by the WCD for the current airspace lease agreements for the grand stairway overhang over a portion of the west side sidewalk of Valor Phillips, the replacement skybridge across Valor Phillips, the back-of-house skybridge connecting the north and south buildings over and across Well Street, and the Expo Hall E overhang over the south side of the Kilbourne Avenue sidewalk. Lastly, the WCD commits to consider participation in the city's Earn and Learn program and apprenticeship opportunities, enter into good faith discussions on finding ways to expand Milwaukee residents and small business contracting opportunities, and to promote MKE United's anti-displacement fund. From management's perspective, agreeing to provide the Common Council with the certainty of a predetermined and guaranteed annual payment that amounts to almost $27.5 million over the term, the removal of our 4 air rights payments, and the elimination of the formula to determine if a payment is due to the city makes this a better agreement for both parties. We presented this agreement last week to the Governance Committee, and they unanimously endorsed approving this and recommending this to the full board. Mr. Chairman, I'm asking the board to make a motion to approve the modified agreement, and if approved, this will then be reviewed and voted upon by the city's Common Council. Any questions for anyone?
First, any questions for Marty on the restated agreement? Yeah, Senator Hutton.
Marty, when we said we gave up our airspace lease agreement obligations dollar-wise, what would that number approximately be?
On an annual basis, it's around $25,000. Over the term of the agreement, it would be $937,000.
Thank you, Senator Hutton. Any other questions for Marty? All right, if not, I will seek a motion for approval of the amended and restated service and benefits agreement between Wisconsin Center District and the City of Milwaukee. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a third. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Oh, sorry, Bob. Sorry, Bob. Abstain, please note. Abstain. Okay, sorry. I apologize. Yeah. Great, thank you. So do we have, let me just redo that again. I apologize. I didn't see the hands up. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? And then we have abstain. Great. Thank you, Robin. I think we have that recorded correctly. All right. Thank you very much. Marty, we'll move on to the CEO report. Yep, go ahead. Sure. President.
Is the expectation that this will be approved as is of the council?
That's the expectation that the negotiating committee on behalf of the city and from the district, Steve and I have. If in fact it is not, then we do not have an amended agreement and the existing agreement will remain in effect. I mean, as you can.
I'm assuming there will be
We can't hear anyone speaking.
Sorry. Sorry, we're in the new room, so we have to.
Hello, is now can you hear me?
Now we can.
My question to the chair, this is Alderman Perez. My question to the chair was, is the expectation to accept that when this goes to council that it will pass as is? And I just said that I would expect some robust discussion. Not every council member has seen this, may not always agree with it. I know I was invited to some of the negotiation meetings, but it got to the point where this was agreed upon, and now we're going to present it to the council. So I just want to be clear and put that on the table for everyone to understand.
Right. And go ahead, Marty.
President Perez, it was discussed in the very beginning of the discussions with the two parties that anything agreed to at the table was subject to the approval of the respective governing bodies, the board being for the district and the common council for the city. So we're aware of that. As you can appreciate, getting to the document that you've been presented with involved a number of different meetings and a lot of give and takes from both sides to negotiate these amended changes. I'd be very happy to participate in any discussions with members of the Common Council. I had initiated this memo to the board back in April, made the attempt to reach all of our board members prior to today's meeting to answer any questions people may have, and I avail myself to do the same with the city if you choose to use that service.
Yeah, and I'll just let you know now, I think that people would want some clarity on what good faith efforts are. Because the city commitments are very clear. I think they're very black and white. The district commitments are good faith efforts. So.
Other than the financial payment, yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Does that answer your question, President
Yes,
Perez? Any other questions? Okay, great, thank you. Marty?
Well, thank you, everyone. Just a couple other things on the CEO report. First off, I do want to start off by reinforcing what Steve has indicated, that he and I have already met with the senior leadership team, and we have begun working on ways to mitigate the existing shortfall in our budget as we've identified for first quarter and project for the balance of this year. So be assured we'll do everything we can to mitigate those variances. Since the January board meeting, the WCD and the Visit Milwaukee sales team have closed 78 new contracts for events coming into the city as far out as 2029. On the entertainment venue side, Miller High Life Theater and Panther Arena, since our last meeting, the Miller High Life Theater has hosted 14 shows, including a 3-night run with the band Goose, February 6th through 8th, which drew over 10,000 people to downtown Milwaukee. We're looking forward to some exciting shows this summer, including 2 nearly sold-out shows with comedian Nikki Glazer at the end of the month, and Lord Huron on July 23rd. The Admirals finished the regular season in first place in the American Hockey League Central Division. This past weekend, they defeated the Rockford Ice Hogs in the Central Division semifinals and are now playing in the Central Division finals against the Texas Stars in a best-of-5 series. One of my favorites, AEW Wrestling, returned to the UWM Panther Arena on March 29th, and this time it was for their signature Saturday night show, Collision, which was broadcast live on TNT. Comedian Cat Williams headlined the arena on April 11th, and Ivan Cornejo, an up-and-coming regional Mexican artist, played his first arena show in Milwaukee on April 29th. We just announced our next arena show with Lord, who will headline the UWM Panther Arena on October 10th. Tickets go on sale for this show at 10 a.m. There was a very robust pre-sale, and last I checked, we had sold over 4,700 tickets to this event in the pre-sale. As we develop the roadmap for the future of Baird Center, UWM Panther Arena, and Miller High Life Theater, we continue to seek guidance and assistance navigating the business and political landscape. We have engaged HB Strategies to serve as our harbor master on this journey to chart a clear path for our lobbying efforts with local and state elected officials and governmental departments. Specifically, we will be working with Rob Marchant and Brian Tafora of HBS. Both join John Yingling and Moira Fitzgerald, who will continue to work with us as well as HBS now. We have two UWM Panther Arena tenant agreements expiring in the next few years, for which we need to begin developing our negotiating positions. The lease with the Milwaukee Admirals hockey team expires at the conclusion of the 26-27 season, 2 years from now, and the lease and naming rights agreement with UWM expires June 30 of 2029. As is common, license agreements with arena and primary tenant, or in our case, tenants, span a significant number of years. The UWM agreement is for 10 years with a one-way 5-year option that they exercised 2 years ago. The Admirals agreement was a 10-year term. Subject to the length and financial terms of each agreement, I will present them to the board for consideration and approval next year. There are several factors that we need to consider, though, before entering into any discussion: reasonable financial terms and conditions for both parties, and the length of the agreement. Both existing agreements were signed before I joined the district, which means this is the first time I have the opportunity to influence the elements of the agreements. In assessing the length of a future agreement, we need to consider what is the best and highest usage of the facilities and the WCD's real estate. If we aren't growing, we as an organization are dying. We have successfully demonstrated to the board we have the skill set to develop and negotiate agreements that serve us and the other party. However, we do not have the expertise to identify best and highest use of the property, nor the appreciation for the timing and cost for developing an alternative. I have not been able to locate any past master plan studies focusing on best and highest uses of the WCD properties. We need to set a benchmark for our entire campus. To assist us and the board, we have engaged Hunden Partners to study Milwaukee and develop a master plan for our property. Hunden Partners has deep expertise with convention centers, arenas, performing arts centers, youth sports complexes, mixed-use districts, attractions, entertainment concepts, activated public spaces, and headquarter and destination hotels. They have been involved in $20 billion in projects, completed over 250 conference, convention, event center, and hotel studies, over 200 youth sports complex, professional stadium, and arena studies, and 87 mixed-use destination districts. The information they ultimately will present will aid us in executing our fiduciary responsibilities to operate, manage, and develop the district's assets in a manner that is in the best interest of the district and our neighborhood. The study will be accompanied by a conceptual master plan that could serve as a framework for the development of the site and will suggest an implementation strategy and development approach. They will begin their work in the coming weeks with in-person and virtual meetings to include the WCD Board, city and county leadership, local hoteliers and restaurateurs, community organizations, and other key stakeholders in order to gain greater insight into opportunities, challenges, and concern that exist for the district, Westtown, and Milwaukee. They will gather and review relevant economic, demographic, tourism, and other data. Their team will assess the current downtown Milwaukee core assets that induce visitation. Hunden will evaluate Milwaukee's position as an economic and tourism center of activity and will consider how this activity generates overnight visitors. This analysis will provide a realistic assessment of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for the area. The study will also consider lost business, that is, event types that cannot be currently hosted either by the absence of specialized venues or by the current market hotel package. In addition, they will cover key drivers of demand and financial realities. Hunden will provide an overview of the industry trends related to the current and potential uses for the site. Their presentation is expected to be given to the board at the January 26 board meeting. Lastly, and simultaneously to this study, we are compiling a 20-year forward-looking capital plan for both the arena and theater. This additional information, the associated expenses and liabilities, will identify the infrastructure needs necessary to maintain and operate these facilities into the future. Having a big picture, long-term perspective of what we could become, along with the expense just to maintain status quo, will help us in our development of the number of years a new agreement with UWM and the Admirals should be. Since January, the WCD and the Baird Center have been recognized for our performance this past year. For the Baird Center, a top project of 2024 by the Daily Reporter, the 2025 Real Estate Project of the Year by the Milwaukee Business Journal, a gold medal in the Retail Showroom, Entertainment, and Recreation category by the American Society of Interior Design. And for the district, yesterday, the WCD was recognized with the Energy Efficiency Excellence Award by Focus on Energy. And probably the one I'm most proud of is being recognized as a top 2025 workplace by the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. All of the awards that I've mentioned are on display for your, that is not a silent auction table. We're not looking to raise money for the district, but all of the awards and acknowledge, okay, stop. All of the awards can be looked at as you leave the meeting. Also, once the meeting is adjourned, as you exit, there is a display of cherry pies, chocolate pies, lemon pies, and chocolates commemorating what I hope you all know, that May 16th of 2024 was the grand opening gala of Baird Center. Those of you who were here last year, the May 16th was on a Thursday night, as was last night, a Thursday night. The storm that we experienced last night wasn't quite as, the storm we experienced last night was greater than what we truly experienced a year ago Thursday, although at 5 o'clock as we opened the doors to the gala, the tornado sirens did go off a year ago. So I would bet that the Thursday in and around the 16th, probably a good bet is going to be a bad weather day. Anyway, just acknowledgement to the staff, everyone involved in the project, and most importantly, the board for your support. We are celebrating today the one-year anniversary of the expanded and modernized Baird Center. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Marty. Pies for all. Were you trying to sell those awards, Steve, for money? Is that what you were trying to do? Are there any questions for Marty from his CEO report or anything around that?
How much is this consultant report going to cost?
It's very, very low six figures, just over $100,000.
Okay.
Greg?
I think I want to increase the cost of it, actually, Bob, because I do think that it's important that as they study the uses, and and we've talked about this a little bit, as they're studying the use for those buildings, I think their remit should be broader. And you're thinking about a 20-year capital plan, thinking about all the land around us, not necessarily what we necessarily control right this minute, and thinking about, well, what could the future of this center look like? How do we grow it? Where does that go? And what are our options? Not that we have to do them, but to know what the different options are. And I think this is, if you're going to do that, thinking about what buildings what future uses may be, I think it's important to think about all the land around us.
That broadened the scope, and I can investigate to see what the incremental cost of that would be.
I know, I told Bob I was gonna make them more expensive.
And what about the old museum building? Is that possibly part of the district someday?
I have not been involved in any discussions
Okay,
about that
with the
becoming
county,
part of
yeah.
our portfolio.
Okay.
Now that Greg has expanded the scope, maybe it is.
Yeah,
Well,
I
it
think
should be.
that's my
I mean-
point, is that not land,
Right.
because where is the opportunity? I mean, we don't have, absolutely, we should be thinking about that. Let's think, doesn't mean to spend the money tomorrow, but let's think about what this all could look like. How do we continue to build on the momentum in the future and keep our optionality open?
Where do you stand with the bonds for the theater?
Mark and then Gerard.
Are those bonds still out there from the Milwaukee Theater?
Yes, they are. I believe there's just under 25 million due on the bonds. Steve?
Yeah, I think it's just over 20 million now. I think the last maturity date on those bonds is 2034. So we've got about another decade of paying those down.
So whatever you do, that's just a drag on the whole thing. Yeah.
If there were to be a redevelopment of that property, paying down those bonds is minimal consideration, quite frankly, for the entire cost of a project development.
Gerard?
Yeah, I would agree that we should take a look at MacArthur Square opportunities, because the state office building is one of those buildings that's under consideration for a different use, if not demolition, as well as the soon-to-be extinct Public Museum building. There's the chance that a new safety building will be developed on that site, and they're all contiguous to our responsibilities. I would, if we don't undertake the challenge on our own, we should certainly coordinate with the county and the city for what might exist as opportunities to collaborate.
Agreed, yeah. So thank you. I think that's part of, hopefully we'll get the notes and we'll get the scope on what that extension would look like in that collaboration. Hopefully we continue to do that now as well as down the road in the future. Other questions, comments, concerns? Yes, President Perez.
I don't know if I'm pressing the right buttons here. I kind of agree with Mr. Marcus, but I guess the expansion I'd like to see is the impact on the nearby neighborhoods. Being the first district south of downtown, sizzling commercial corridors, I have a lot of missing teeth, and how everything downtown impacts nearby neighborhoods, north and south. And if we're going to look at properties and the future, I think part of what we study has to be the impact of nearby density and the neighborhoods that are impacted by. I mean, there's decisions either being made in my district or not being made on supporting projects based on what's going on downtown.
Again, great comment. Bob?
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that the city just completed its downtown comprehensive land use plan, which seems to be exactly what your consultants are going to duplicate in essence. Now, they may look with more particularity at Wisconsin Center District properties, but once you start venturing into the state office building and the public museum and the parking lots across the street from the Wisconsin Center District, the city's looked at that. So I just would hope we're not spending a lot of money to duplicate effort or come up with conflicting conclusions or recommendations. Has his contract already been executed?
Yes, it has been.
All right, well, then it's not going to be expanded, basically. The scope has already been defined, I assume.
The scope to look limited to the district has been executed.
Yeah, okay.
And there really were two motivating factors to do this. One was to help us get an idea of how that property could be activated, and if so, when, so that as we enter into discussions with the admirals and admirals and UWM, we're not creating the term of an agreement that would restrict us from doing something down the road.
No, that makes perfect sense. I have no problem with the contract being executed. These studies are always useful. but I think you just heard some comments which just doubled the scope.
It certainly broadens the scope to look at neighboring facilities. But the study that you've referenced that's been done for downtown, and I'm a member of the Bid 21 board, I'm aware of all the great things they're doing with the city. Our property is identified as existing, but there's been no information provided to anyone about activating that, which is why we need to control our own destiny.
Yeah, two things, Bob. I have to believe that if you go to a consultant, even if they're already under contract, they'd be happy to expand the scope of their deal. So I don't think it's locked in stone that they won't. But
I agree.
Yeah, that's part of that too. And I hear you on the city plan. That's a very fair point. I've been through 2 cycles of this in the last. I've been around long enough. I hate saying stuff like that, but and not everything that's in the plan ever always comes to fruition. And so I think being thoughtful and to your point, adding a level of granularity and specificity with regard to what we have here. Again, let's be careful not to duplicate, but let's also not just say accept what's on the page and end it there.
Any other comments? I think those are all great comments to make sure that we are inclusive of other things and kind of take other things and make sure they're complementary, not duplicative. And then President Perez, I think your comments on impact of neighborhoods and things around the city also is something that we can go back to and Greg, yes, I would agree with you that they would be glad to expand the scope. There's never a problem there. Oh, yes, Senator Hutton.
I've been around long enough to hear various discussions around long-range planning. As a middle-ager, I guess I would call, I've been a part of that planning and certainly heard plenty of discussions around it. I think 10 years ago we were going to talk about regional planning because that was important to provide comprehensive thinking relative to what the region needs to look like. And I think the fact that we're having some discussion today is great. But I think also brings back to mind how linked are we as a community with all the stakeholders for what we should be focused on and where should we be focused on it and who's going to be focused on it. I think as a discussion, we've just heard the city of Milwaukee went through some type of planning process. The district here is going to do the same thing. I'm sure the county's had some discussions on that as well. And I think that's just important for us to have a little sense of, are we at a point as community leaders that we've been able to have a cohesive mindset as to what and where we should be going in order to give direction to a firm that's going to come in and do some type of comprehensive overview for us. Are they going to focus on the things that we want them to focus on? Are we going to give them some direction as to where that focus should be in terms of where the city leaders are saying we should go, the community leaders are saying it should go, the education leaders are saying we should go. And I think that's an important part for us to assess. Do we have that foundation intact enough to be able to get what we need to out of this type of comprehensive review? I'm glad the comprehensive review is happening. I would just hope that we get our money's worth, so to speak, because we're all rowing down the same path of, at least on a high-level basis, having some sense of what are we actually trying to get out of this based on what we think we want to be in 20 years and in 50 years. So what about the education system? What about transit? What about a whole variety of issues that need to be a part of this discussion? So just my 2 cents.
Agreed.
I'll just add one last point about the importance of thoughtful planning, and it's probably one of the reasons we're sitting in this building today, and that was because 25, 30 years ago, my dad really said, you know what, if we build to the, if we rebuild where we are and we stay to the north, we will have a problem one day if we ever want to expand. Right now, we have the option of going in both directions. It will require a bunch of land acquisitions, which is what happened along Wisconsin Avenue. And then they preserve the optionality for the day to go north. But that was deliberate and thoughtful planning 30 years ago. And so again, this is not something that has to happen today, but you do keep your options open for the next generation. So just a little history.
Great. Are there any other comments? These are great. I think, Marty, I think you've got the notes, and I think we can come back and see what that looks like to make sure everything's linked together. I think were the comments. Any other questions or comments? Good. All right. Thank you. Next order of business, I'll just take over. Our future board meeting dates are in the last page of your packet. I do think there is one change that Marty has recommended, so I think we'll have him present that real briefly. I think it's for our next meetings, moving some time up to give you a little bit of time around the Thanksgiving holiday.
If you find, as part of the board packet, upcoming board meetings, we had identified having finance, personnel, and the governance committee meetings be held on Thursday, November 6th, with the full board meeting being on Friday, November 14th. I'd like to propose to give us more time away from the Thanksgiving break, that we move the committee meetings to Thursday, October 30th, and the full board meeting to Friday, November 7th. We don't have to make that determination. Everyone can take a look at their schedules, respond back to Robin. We could let the group know of the change at the September board meeting. So we're looking at a November change.
Right, so Robin, you'll send that out to everybody on the change, and we'll make sure that everyone, it's not a conflict for anybody. Hopefully, we were giving everybody enough time there. And then the next one would be the following in December.
If necessary.
If necessary. That the October 30th and Friday full board meeting, November 1st, would be
November
for,
7th.
sorry, the 7th would be for our budget, correct? Budget approval. So that would be important for everyone to be here as part of that. All right, with that, any future board discussion items, please elevate those to us, bring them up now. We'll put them on the next agenda for those meetings coming. Yes?
Just wondering, when does the budget process start?
We'll be starting that after the 4th of July holiday. We'll start taking a look at next year's event calendar and start building out revenues and expenses from there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And Representative Haywood, we'll probably go through the same process, Steve, that we have gone through in the past with the individuals and the committees to go through that and then present to the full board.
That's
correct?
right. Yep.
All right, that's also for the edification, some of the newer board members of how we go about doing this. If there are no other comments, questions, concerns, I will seek a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed? Great. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.